Yeah, Sean, did Jared prove anything to you today?
I think he did a nice job, Bill. I thought he improved on last week. I think you really saw a guy that stepped in and he did what he could. I thought he made some plays. Thought he saw the field well, like I was mentioning. He did a good job today.
He's your quarter. Is he your quarterback?
Yeah, he's a quarterback, right?
This is going to come as a shocker to a lot of people that have been watching my content, especially if you watched my final video on the LA Rams once they were defeated by the Green Bay Packers on Saturday. But I actually think that they had a remarkable season, given what they were dealing with this year, including another year without a first-round draft pick, trading Brandon Cooks, and cutting ties with a player who is supposed to be a franchise cornerstone in Todd Gurley. I was very surprised that they were able to make it this far. But alas, things aren't necessarily going so well for the LA Rams. And before I get to the content, I wanted to let you know that this source is actually from NFL.com. So it's a fairly legitimate source. I'm not pulling this from the depths of the internet. Before we get to the content, I just wanted to let you guys know we're giving away a PlayStation 5 to a subscriber that turns on our notifications on this channel. Whether you're an old subscriber or a new subscriber, if you sub and hit that notification bell, you have entered for a chance to win a PS5. If you want additional entries, I highly recommend following us on Instagram and on Twitter because we typically feature your tweets and your Instagram takes in our content. Now that we got all that out of the way, break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? The LA Rams once again had a remarkable season given everything that went on this past offseason. They traded Brandon Cooks for Van Jefferson, who seems to be a fairly good wide receiver. He just didn't get much usage this year. Once again, the Rams didn't have a first-round pick. Their offensive line is aging, although they're fairly solid in my opinion. And there are a lot of question marks for this team. For one, yesterday we found out that the defensive coordinator of the LA Rams, who Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald would rave about, Brandon Staley, has moved on to the rival Los Angeles team to be the head coach of the LA Chargers, which, by the way, is a remarkable fit. That LA Chargers team has a remarkable defense and a great offense, and they just need the adequate captain to pilot that ship, very similar to what the Cleveland Browns were a year ago. They just need a competent head coach. And subsequently, the LA Rams are faced with a ton of personnel decisions that they have to make this offseason. The first one is replacing Brandon Staley, but the next has to do with roster construction. Clearly, when you're a head coach like Sean McVay, you do have significant leverage when it comes to constructing the team, even though that's technically Les Snead's job. And McVay clearly made a point at the end of the season where he said that no player's job is safe. I'd assume that comes at an exception for Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald. Now, when he was asked about Jared Goff and whether his job was safe, he said he is included, saying everything is being evaluated. I'm not ready to make any sort of statements with regards to anybody. Starting position or not, we're going to have a level of competition at everything that we do. Now, don't get me wrong, ever since coming to the LA Rams, Sean McVay has worked wonders with the former number 1 overall pick. Jared Goff has earned 2 Pro Bowl selections and passed for 17,082 yards, 102 touchdowns, and 53 turnovers in his 4 seasons under Sean McVay. Yet, people don't necessarily look at Jared Goff and think that he is an elite top-tier quarterback that deserves the money that he is getting. And Goff aside, you just look at the rest of this Rams roster and you just can't help but feel for Sean McVay. Because on top of not having any draft capital to work with in the upper part of the NFL draft this year, key players such as Leonard Floyd, Morgan Fox, Gerald Everett, Josh Reynolds, Darius Williams, and John Johnson are all set to hit free agency. Now, Jared Goff isn't necessarily the reason why the LA Rams haven't been performing well or haven't been Super Bowl contenders. As a matter of fact, I will always blame that on Les Snead being overly aggressive to make the most out of Jared Goff's rookie scale contract towards the beginning of Sean McVay's tenure. Bear in mind, this is a team that gave up a 2018 second round pick to get Sammy Watkins, who would leave 1 year later, would then give up a 2019 second round pick and a 2018 fourth round pick for Marcus Peters, a player that they would trade a mere year later for a fifth round pick, and a team that traded a first round pick for Brandon Cooks, a third round pick and a fifth round pick for Dante Fowler, and 2 first round picks and a fourth round pick for Jalen Ramsey. We all knew that this scenario was going to come sooner rather than later for the LA Rams, because they don't have a first round pick to work with until 2022, and it's fairly likely that they aren't going to be performing so well this year unless if they're able to get a free agent or two to really help them out. But on top of all of this, there are reports that Sean McVay and Jared Goff currently don't have the greatest relationship. Now, Goff finished this season with a decent body of work, posting a final passing line of 3,952 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, and a completion percentage of 67 and a 90 passer rating. Those are pretty good numbers. But Goff has been maddeningly inconsistent and would have games where he would play absolutely remarkably, which would result in the Rams getting on a winning streak, and then he would come out and lose to the New York Jets. And frankly, Sean McVay didn't know which version of Jared Goff he's going to get. So on Saturday, McVay said that Jared Goff is the quarterback right now, which wasn't necessarily the most resounding endorsement of Jared Goff. Now, according to NFL Network's Steve Wyche, he reported on Monday that there's more than just inconsistent performance at play with the quarterback situation for the Rams. According to Wyche, he says that we know that John Wolford came in and they were excited about him when Jared Goff got hurt and the way he performed. And then John Wolford had that horrible neck injury. So I think a lot of people are wondering if they're going to bring in a veteran type of quarterback to push Jared Goff this offseason, or at least have that threat there as a backup to see if they can elevate Jared Goff. Very similarly to what the Eagles did with Jalen Hurts this past year, because we all know how well that worked out for Doug Peterson. The people I've spoken to said basically at this moment the relationship with Goff and McVay are not great. They need marriage counseling, is what one person said to me. I think this is something that they're going to be able to work through, but there's got to be some healing, and that's not just with Jared Goff's injured thumb. And if you pay attention to Sean McVay's vague responses in the aftermath of the Rams' final game of the season and their division playoff loss to the Green Bay Packers, he said things like this when he was asked about Jared Goff's future, saying, "For me to fully answer that, I think those are conversations that you have to have between you and your players first. To be able to have the right plan of attack, I think you got to be able to take a step back, evaluate the entirety of it, and what I will say that you certainly can't take away, that I mentioned to you guys each the last couple of weeks, is that for him to come back from a thumb surgery, do what he did in Seattle, do what he did yesterday, it's a real credit to him, his competitiveness, and his resilience, and I think there's a lot of positives from that. I'd say I think as you grow, as you continue to learn, that's just where we're at. I'm not saying anything other than we're evaluating that right now, and I think it's important that you do that at every single spot, and no position is excluded from that conversation. Obviously, Sean McVay may feel a little handicapped by Jared Goff's ability. Initially, after a rookie season that saw Jared Goff struggle mightily, Sean McVay was able to install a jet motion offense that completely ran over the entire NFL. And the jet motion offense is an extremely complicated offense, but for me to explain it, all it is essentially a wide receiver will be in motion, which will cause a linebacker to have uncertainty about whether the wide receiver was going to go on a jet sweep or a running back was going to be on a zone read run. But on top of all of this, Jared Goff had the ability to fake the handoff and also have a wide open play action shot to pick up a decent gain of around 20 plus yards. That being said, that does wonders for a quarterback's confidence, his accuracy, and his ability to create plays. But once the New England Patriots were able to completely sabotage the jet motion offense by running the 5-2 bear on the LA Rams, Jared Goff's weaknesses came out for everybody to see on national television, and the year after, the Rams struggled a little bit. Nevertheless, Sean McVay was able to tinker with his offensive scheme this year, and once again, the Rams were good, but not necessarily great. And while Jared Goff does appear to be a good player, it appears as though he's stagnating in his development. I personally do not expect the LA Rams to move on from Jared Goff just because they're committed to him until 2025 and they don't even have the assets to go out and get someone else, so you might as well focus on the present and build around Jared Goff. The Rams went all in on the past, and as a result, they are kind of handicapped for the future. And I don't think a new quarterback is going to solve any problems. The Rams do have a remarkable head coach that is capable of winning in a variety of ways. A few years ago, when the Rams made their Super Bowl run, they were primarily an offensive team. Now, their entire game is based upon their ability to establish the run and suffocate opposing offenses with their defense. That features the best cornerback in the league and the best defensive tackle in the league. The Rams could essentially fix everything if they just slowed things down for a year and were not as aggressive, because there's no purpose in being aggressive for the time being. They can go all in on a rebuild by trading Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald for a plethora of draft picks, or they could stand pat and just wait until a year from now where they will begin to have some draft capital come back to them. Either way, I don't think Jared Goff is the problem. He's not Patrick Mahomes, but he's definitely not Blake Bortles. I don't think he was worth the draft haul that the LA Rams gave up to get him, but you could do a lot worse at your quarterback position. So let me know in the comment section down below, do you think the LA Rams should move on from Jared Goff? Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.